the morning sunrise. In Lions Gate, 'neath the tall fir trees, on your face feel the ocean breeze. Feel the magic that's in the air. In Lions Gate, the fair.
This hot service.
There's the recording sign.
There we go. Your Excellency, take it away.
Welcome all. I am Baron Kinrick Bearson of LionsGate. This march is not going out like a lamb, but with the roar of the lion's den. This is the final panel of the month, and other panels have dug into the history of our kingdom and our barony. We've held space and invited members here to tell their stories. But nothing speaks to the heart of our game, the pageantry, the excitement, and the thrill of watching new leaders be made on the field. We are here today to welcome two incredibly special guest hosts to talk to us today on the themes of equipping and armoring new fighters, something that's very near and dear to my own heart. Very few other members in this kingdom have had as much direct experience with armoring and mentoring brand new fighters as our hosts. Duke Ian Gower first became our Baroness's inspiration in combat for LionsGate in 2002. I remember his incursion into our group. And has since gone on to be Prince of Tiree and 2 kingdom reigns here in Antir. Sir Argyle Macmillan has been Armored Defender of Tirvanog, Coldkeep, and Danescombe, and he received his Hastleonis in 2005. The Hastleonis recognizes excellence and chivalry in the pursuit and practice of the art of war. He received his Havoc, which recognizes martial areas, which better our Principality of Tiree. And I personally believe the most grueling and difficult tournament I have ever participated in was with him at Clinton during Prince Kieran Memorial Bio-Life Tournament. These gentles represent 2 of our best leaders and mentors. We could not ask for better representation for what it means to strive hard in the field while supporting this combat that they love. Please welcome for our last panel this spring, Duke Ian and Sir Argyle.
Thank you very much for that introduction. I'm going to take this opportunity to introduce our co-panelists, and in typical Argyllian fashion, I'm winging it and have nothing prepared. So instead, I will appropriately sing the praises of Viscount Sir Olen, a valiant frenemy, a bard of great renown, and a warrior that I'm sure has left more than just myself wondering, why am I still doing this sport? The man hits like a truck and then makes you feel good about it immediately thereafter. And I'm honored to call you a friend, and thank you so much, my brother, for joining us on this panel today. Also very pleased to have the perspective of 2 of our newest fighters in the Cold Keep area. We have Astrid of the Girlsquad joining us online, and Katie is joining me as well today, and looking forward to having a new fighter's perspective on the process of armoring and equipping, and you know, what we have to go through to get people involved in this great sport. Sir Olen, if you have anything you would like to say to introduce yourself, please do so right now.
Well, I'm in Danescombe out of Kelowna, British Columbia. I got dragged into the SCA back in '98, and been a total junkie ever since. I've obviously been a Viscount, so I won the Principality of Tiree tournament once. And my newest joy and passion right now is fostering and mentoring a whole bunch of university students up here at UBCO.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. and that's really, I think you're going to bring a lot of value to this panel with that perspective, one that myself and His Grace share through our involvement with the UNBC Medieval Club. Astrid, could you please introduce yourself to everyone?
I'll start by saying that I'm Astrid from Girlsquad. I live in the unceded territory of the XXI First Nation. So I'm originally from Mexico, and I moved here about 10 years ago. And I'm still relatively a new fighter, being part of the SA for 3 years. And my heart is with the Girl Squad. So yeah, that's a little bit of introduction. I'm also part of the EDI council member. So you feel free to reach out. I'm here to serve.
Awesome. Thank you, Astrid. And thank you for acknowledging the traditional territories of the Lheidli T'enneh that we reside in. In the society, it's known as the Shire of Cold Keep. The colonial name is Prince George in central British Columbia, but it's traditional territories of the Lheidli T'enneh, and it's good to recognize that. Katie, would you like to say hello to everyone?
Hey everybody, I'm Katie, also of Girl Squad. I started fighting with Astrid, I guess about 3 years ago, but we're still relatively new, especially since we haven't fought in a year and a half.
Yeah.
So really we've been fighting for about a year and have definitely gone through the trials and tribulations of trying to find armor that is not super uncomfortable. So hopefully we can bring some value to the panel as well.
Awesome, thank you. So just a bit of housekeeping here. For this panel, we have a series of topics that we're going to address. And so if anyone has a question, I would really encourage you to throw it into the chat. You know, we'll see it on the sidebar as it pops up, and we can address the questions sort of at a per topic level. And if you want to put your hand up and ask the question rather than type it, I would just ask that you wait until I'll basically say, okay, that concludes topic number 1, time for questions. I would prefer that if there are any new fighters or aspiring new fighters out there, I would rather we address your questions. Myself and the other panelists, we have a lot of stuff that we're going to talk about, and you'll see me looking to the side at my schedule I've got set up here. But really, if there are questions that we can help new fighters out with, that's going to be far more valuable. So please do not hesitate to ask your questions. With that, we'll get started on the first topic. And this topic, I wanted us all to comment on, just to show that we all, we've His Grace, we have a Viscount here. We've got a lot of experience, a lot of skill, but we all started somewhere. And so I will start this off, and this first topic, number 1, is going to be my first set of armor, and everyone's going to explain what their first set of armor looked like. And I want this to be the first set that you called your own, that you got rolling with. So not quite the loner armor. I can remember the first armor I put on was still warm and sweaty from Wara. Wara Steinar was wearing it, and he took it off, and I put it on. And you know what? If you keep fighting after that kind of experience, you're made for this. But my first set of armor was white pickle barrel plastic. It was one of Sir Geoffrey's patterns, the clamshell kind of style pattern. It was a tank, and it is still in service. That very suit of armor is in the newbie armor bin at UNBC right now. So 20 years on, it's still going. And so let's go. Your Grace, could you tell us about your first set?
Well, the first set I fought in, I borrowed off a rugby player who was also in the group, who was easily twice my size. And so his form-fitting armor fit me something like a baggy tank top. And in my first fight practice, I broke 2 ribs and I quit fighting. And I didn't tell anybody that story for probably 10 years because I was a rugby player, and I did jujitsu, and I did all those hardcore things, and I put armor on and they broke me, and I couldn't process it, because I wanted to do this thing so badly and it hurts so much. I then went away and I spent the next probably year and a half trying out fencing, trying out archery, and then quietly put together my own suit of newbie armor. And so that was kind of where my first love of armoring came from, but also my first kind of understanding that we had to do better than just hope for the best from the newbie armor bin. The guys up in Prince George now have a half dozen different suits of armor of different sizes and shapes. And while it's not perfect, you can get something pretty close compared to the behemoth suit I was put in that didn't work at all. My first suit was actually a combination mostly of lacrosse and hockey gear for my upper body, because I found stuff at a Play It Again sports store that was relatively cheap and looked like it could take a beating. I bought a helmet online, like super high risk, and actually got lucky. That one ended up being a tank. And I started off with plate steel legs, and it sounds wonderful, except they were ungodly heavy and they started off flat because the previous owner had beaten them into a pulp, and they had gone from being kind of curved around your thigh to being pretty flat. And I remember spending probably 4 hours in my basement with a sledgehammer and a piece of railroad track, getting them like somewhat thigh shaped again. And yeah, that suit did me for probably my first 2 years.
Awesome.
And there's none of it left.
Yeah. Awesome. Your Excellency, Sir Olen, how about yourself? Tell us about your first set.
You can hear me, I hope.
Yep.
So I was showing earlier my first helmet that Sir Ragnar helped me make, and I added some embellishments over the years. So that's my first helmet from back in the day. Might still be the original paddock. No, it's not. But and I actually was able to scrounge up. Oh, there they are. I got a little show and tell here. My original one of my legs that was in the armor pile, and I embellished it with some wonderful shiny duct tape. To hide that ugly blue plastic. And I had sewn on a whole bunch of just old leather that I'd gotten, some old sheepskin stuff. So this is one of my original pieces of armor that I had back in the day. And yeah, it's still in the pile. One of our local fighters, Thorn, did a lot of leather work, and he uses kind of this pattern. It's got some articulation in it. I've had about, I don't know, one about every 2 or 3 years ever since I joined. So that's also kind of part of the original armor from back in the day. And the original breastplate that I had, I'm a little cheap, so I bought the barrel and made the legs and made the body protection and the arms and the gorget all out of barrel plastic. But the barrel plastic, I'd done just a 2-piece that wrapped all the way around me front and back. And it took about a year to figure out if somebody hit me in the front, it transferred all the way around and I didn't feel the energy. And so I had to turn it into tombstone style armor with, a front plate, a back plate, and 2 little side plates so that I could feel shots a little better. And it's been carved up a few times, and I think it still exists down in the pile downstairs in the shop. So it's still kicking around.
That's awesome. Love it. Astrid, tell us what it's like getting a new suit of armor in the modern era. Was it enough of the dinosaurs talking? Give us a new perspective.
Oh no. First of all, I remember the first time when we joined, one of the biggest thing was like, okay, so when are we gonna start hitting each other? Well, we need to start suiting up. Going through the bin of UNBC, trying to figure out what are we gonna wear. We ended up, I'm gonna share a picture, if you guys don't mind, of what we ended up finding. We have, this is Sir Argyle old shield. I don't know if he's still working, but we ended up finding lacrosse mismatched padding on the like the shoulders, and just pickle barrel all around. And then I regret wearing that helmet because it was not actually super protective, and we only managed to actually find one that actually fit a woman's size, so anything smaller for ourselves. We were like, Ilva and I would like, just exchange each other, and then, well, now it's my turn to hit you. So we were just going back and forth. She will probably talk a little bit more about it, but yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. That was the first set of armor that we fought in, but I think like in regards to the question of like your first set of armor, I think a challenge that both Astrid and I had was like a tombstone, or like the plastic doesn't really work sort of on the upper body. Especially for myself, it was like that was a really big challenge. So I'm going to tell you what my first set of armor is, because I'm currently wearing it still. It was incredibly labor intensive, but I didn't really see any other option for what I could wear. I made hardened leather lamellar. My upper body has like just the shoulders, and it comes down. Because it's lamellar, it forms to the body a bit better. And then I wear like I guess like a lacrosse belt like around the middle for some extra protection. So when I tell people that's the first armor that I wore, they're like, oh, that's so good, you know. But I think what's, you know, people don't realize always is that was completely out of necessity. Like there was nothing in the newbie armor bin that Astrid and I could really wear. And Astrid was wearing like a hand-me-down molded leather upper body armor for a while.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is how it's gonna ended up looking.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah. So that's the leather that I made. Hardened leather with the leather. I cut out each of those and strung them together and hardened them with beeswax. And then that's Astrid's molded leather.
Yeah, this used to be by Countess Natalia Armour.
Yeah.
So it was amazing gift for her, and I ended up like trying to make it so it fit my body. But yeah, we're still fighting with that.
Yeah, so a little challenging. Would have definitely gone with the plastic if we were kind of able to do that, but had to sort of scrounge a little bit more. And then for the rest of the body was, I think, like just newbie armor stuff. I wore like plastic legs and all that. And the legs have been another thing that have been quite difficult for me. In a year, I think I've made 6 different sets of legs, and still they are not right yet. Yeah. So maybe I'll talk about that a little bit later, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue in. So with this this topic, not really not a lot of opportunity for questions, but we'll be able to get into that next. But if anybody does have a question, I don't see anything in the chat, but I do see some comments there. Thank you for that. Sir Bolverk's armor, I could see how that would be way too small for just about anyone. But that's awesome. So topic number 2, now that we've all established that we all come from the same place, topic number 2 is on the subject of loaner gear. The first hit is always free, ... So I would like to, I'm going to put 2 of my presenters on the spot here. Sir Olen, I would like to hear your thoughts on the triangle. The triangle being cheap, quick, and good. You get to pick 2 of those options. So what are your thoughts on the mindset behind newbie armor being armor that meets minimum standards and gets people on the field ASAP? Maybe it doesn't look good, maybe it doesn't protect perfectly, but it'll pass inspection and it'll get you fighting. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you pretty much just echoed my thoughts, is get out there and get fighting. So cheap and fast, right? Get in the armor, try it out, find what works for you, what doesn't work for you. And then either modify what you got or build something while you're using the stuff that doesn't quite work for you.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a big piece. Is this is not a sport for everybody. It was one that we we kind of we come up with a concept of what we think it's going to be like, and really hope that works out. And it's really expensive once you start throwing money at the problem. And so as much as newbie armor is always kind of a horrible compromise, I think it lets you get in and decide whether the camaraderie is enough, and this feels like the right place. Because like any hobby, once you commit to it, there's no limit to the amount of money you can spend on the problem, and that's not an easy place to start. So yeah, quick, cheap, get in there, and then from there take your time. Like, pick the piece that is most offensive and work on replacing it. And I don't think that's ever a process that finishes. There's always something that's not quite the way it should be.
Yeah, exactly. Your Grace, thank you for that. I'd like to hear more of your thoughts on what do you think is an appropriate timeline, perhaps, for a new fighter to say, okay, I want something that's form fitted. I want something that's more individualized for myself. Do you think there is a timeline? What are your thoughts?
I think it depends on how serious you are about fighting. If you're somebody who's fairly competitive, I think you push your timeline a little bit, because I think in your first 2 or 3 years, if you're committed to practicing, you've kind of learned the basics. You've kind of learned how to throw the shots and where the blocks are supposed to go, and like how all the bits are supposed to work together. And I think about that time you start to reach the wall of, but my armor doesn't let my wrist move like that, or when I duck, my helmet moves funny, and that's not working for me. And so I think, yeah, maybe 2 or 3 years in, if you're serious about fighting, you've probably reached a point where your armor is actually frustrating you, and there are probably some changes in really needing to have a sword that's made for you, and a shield that's the right size, and a helmet that isn't overly sized on you. Like, and I think I think it becomes a frustration point where you aren't improving the way you want to.
Ilva, what are your thoughts on the fast, cheap, good triangle versus the form fitted? I mean, you basically told us already you had to go the form fitted route. Yeah. If you had a fast, cheap, good option, would that have been more appealing?
That's kind of a hard question to answer. I think I need to acknowledge my personal privilege in this matter. Is like, I have a partner who has a lot of armor and has a lot of tools that are specifically for making armor. So, I'm just not sure that I can answer this question without kind of acknowledging that. I'm going to maybe instead speak to my experience like with the medieval club, because Astrid and I, we're often trying to get new people in armor. And even with our half a dozen sets of armor, just thinking about the new fighters, other than myself and Astrid, like the range of sizes of new fighters that we have, it's like, of the 10 of them, they're like from very, very small to pretty big. And like trying to get them in these sets of armor. Like I think, coming from a sports background, where when you join a new sport, you want to know, what gear do I need? Can I borrow that gear to try it out? I think the more cheap armor that you have, the better. I think you should try to get as many people in armor as possible, because I agree that it's not a sport for everybody, and that you need to get people in that armor so they can decide if that's something that they want to do. Mm-hmm. And I think the more people you get in armor, this is something we have struggled with since I've been involved, is, somebody will come to practice, they'll be working on the Pell for a while, for, the first week or two, and then they want to get in armor, and it's just so difficult to armor them, mm-hmm. And ideally we get them in armor as quickly as possible, because some of them are not going to stay, and some of them are going to realize they love it, and they're going to start making the good armor, the one that fits them better. So yeah, I think just you know, the more armor you have at your disposal of different sizes, the better. And whatever the cheapest and fastest way to do that is the, to me, seems like the best option.
Awesome. Thank you. Astrid, what are your thoughts?
Are we gonna talk about helmets? 'Cause that's
Not
gonna
yet.
be
That's
great.
coming.
So that is like a great part of like the yeah, I want to fight, but I want to do it safely, right? I want to make sure. I remember when I yeah, like something like that. I was wearing I remember one of our armor parties, and was one of the, okay, this is fitting me well, and then got a shot to the head and was like, yeah, nope, this is a calling for a concussion. I think that probably trusting yourself to like make sure that you're safe, make sure that you're having somebody with experience beside you to just go about like how it's supposed to be fitting on your head. It was a struggle because as a really petite person, it could be either your head is too big, your neck is too short, and like you have all these everybody's unique, right, in our bodies, and that is the hardest part of how we do it in a way that is affordable for a new fighter to be safe and put themselves out there, knowing that this may be some discomfort, right, but afterwards that we are actually looking forward to keep going in this sport.
Awesome. Thank you. So I'm super excited to see that we have some questions here scrolling on the side. So Althea asks a question: what is a ballpark cost for your first set of gear that's not out of the loaner bin? And really quickly, someone else do the math as I spit out numbers. Talking $30 for a barrel, let's say $25 for a scrap leather bag. Maybe you're going to get a gorget, maybe a demi gauntlet out of that. Let's say $20 miscellaneous pop rivets, washers, a couple of buckles, that sort of thing.
Probably another $50 in like sports gear, like needing to buy a jock, needing to buy knee pads and elbow pads if you don't have them from another sport. Like I threw a number in there. I said I could probably do it $150.
Yeah.
Like minus the helm.
Yeah.
What do you think, Olen, about that?
Yeah, that sounds about right to me as well. And because I have acquired a fair amount of loaner gear, one of the things that we do to give people a chance to get in kit and fight is the university group has actually bought a whole bunch of knee pads and cups and gills.
Yeah.
And so it's not go find it. We have it here. Give me, $10-15, whatever it is that, we got a big batch of them for fairly cheap. And whatever's left over is for the crew for next year. But yeah, your prices sound about right to me as well.
Yeah, I do the same thing.
I'll do a few things like use nails instead of copper rivets to try and save some money. But again, I'm kind of cheap, so.
Yeah. I mean, I find I do the same thing coaching middle school rugby. Like I buy cleats in bulk. I buy mouth guards in bulk. I have a bin full of cleats from kids from previous years. Like I think that big piece is that household or that group infrastructure makes things so much different. Being able to say, hey, like, don't worry about buying that. I have one of those, or throw me $5 and you can use a bunch of the buckles and rivets and things that I already have. Because it can be pretty daunting to go to the hardware store and just, like I said, start throwing money at the problem and not really know what you're getting out of it.
Yeah, exactly. I think we can all agree here that what you mentioned there, having that existing group that has acquired these assets already is really such a huge first step. I cannot imagine how daunting it would be for a new fighter that lives in a community that doesn't have an SCA presence already, or doesn't have a large SCA presence where they've been able to acquire the gear, because that gear has to live somewhere. That's somebody's basement, somebody's shed. We don't all have an opportunity to squirrel things away at a university or a community hall, that sort of thing. So really good points there. We do have a couple of questions about helmets here, and I was actually going to leave helmets to the end, but I think let's get into this just really quick. The questions are similar in how do I find them and cost. And man, this is where I get to sound old because, you know, what, 20 plus years ago, if you weren't sourcing that helmet locally, you were waiting until your first event. You were hoping someone was going to have a helmet for sale at Clinton. You were relying upon your people that lived in bigger communities to try to get one for you. Now with the internet, it's a lot easier. But you alluded to this, Your Grace, there is a measure of risk associated with purchasing helmets online. Yeah, and I really want to take this opportunity for the new fighters, and we have had some new fighters identify themselves in the chat there. Thank you so much for joining us. Please, please, please do not buy a helmet online without vetting it through a veteran fighter first. And I say this because we had a fellow who showed up to practice beaming. He was absolutely radiating with joy because his great helm that he purchased online had arrived and his kit was finally complete and he didn't have to borrow a newbie helmet ever again. And he was overjoyed. And our teacher at the time, he looked at it and he said, can I see the helmet? And he grabbed his helmet and he went like this, wham, and with his knuckles caved in the top of the dome because he could tell just by looking at it that it was far too light a gauge. And the guy's face just melted, right? Like it's just as if his hopes and dreams were crushed. And so the odds of that happening now are thankfully much more slim, but please vet your purchases through an experienced individual first. Take it on Facebook. Hey, have you guys ever heard of this vendor before? Wow, look at this. This helmet's so cheap. What do you think? Get those opinions. My brothers, your thoughts?
I'm just looking at the chat here, talking about buying new helms and minimum gauges. I wouldn't put anything less than 14 gauge on my head. Most of the guys I know that are competitive have tops that are probably closer to 12 gauge tops, 12 gauge mod steel, 12 gauge stainless, and 14 or 12 in spring steel. So like a 14 gauge mild top would be the bottom end of what I'd be comfortable putting on my head to have somebody like these gentlemen swinging at me. Part of it's the mass of the helmet absorbs some of that impact, and it's not just your head taking the blow. For people who haven't played before, the first time you pick up a helmet, you're like, dear God, am I going to put this on my head? Yeah, heavier is better. There's a reason that we've never allowed aluminum or titanium helmets, even though you could make them stronger for lighter.
Sir Olen, your thoughts on helmets before we...
Yeah, I got really spoiled. My first helmet had a 12 gauge crown on it. And I have 12 gauge, it's 14 stainless and then 12 stainless and then 12 stainless. So I would rather have the weight. That's the most important piece of equipment. It would suck if somebody hit me in the arm and I broke it, but I probably wouldn't die from a broken arm. But if your helmet fails and you eat with a spoon the rest of your life, that would really suck. So I am a big fan of beefy, heavy helmets. And you can do things like adding the camels onto them to add weight as well. And that'll also help absorb some of that energy when you're getting whacked in the melon.
Technical on the camel too. The camel brings the center of mass lower down on your head, which gets rid of that kind of bobblehead effect of having a slightly top-heavy helm. So if you can afford a camel or as an upgrade later, that makes a massive difference. Somebody was talking about lighter gauge for body. If you look at like lamellar style armors, you can get away with a lot lighter gauges when you're talking about small overlapping plates. But the bigger breastplates out of lighter gauges just get trashed. Like where we don't fight with medieval weapons. We beat each other with baseball bats when it comes to the physics of what we do to armor. So steel breastplates and steel legs that would take the abuse from a metal sword. We do different damage to them, and we don't fight occasionally in tournaments. We fight every week with a bunch of guys in the backyard, and like we are really rough on our gear. That's another reason why for newbies that plastic stuff works so much. This works so well. Is there's not much you can do to a set of plastic legs or plastic body armor. It's still ugly, but it's exactly the same as when you started. I wanted to share my screen quickly while we're talking about different armors. If I can figure out how to do it again. I lost this and then found it again. This is an old Night of the Month calendar.
Yeah.
Hope you guys can see this.
Yeah.
I've posted a link to this in the chat. This was put out in the dark ages of the SCA, but it is an amazing resource. When you start to move from being a novice fighter to actually trying to represent something more medieval looking, it is really easy to accidentally become a mishmash of 14 different time periods. And it's really hard to sometimes get that first vision of what you want to do. This is a kind of a cool resource. So this guy starts off with a picture of somebody from 1325, and then gives you a page of, hey, this is actually a way you could make this in the SCA. You could make a set of quilted armor and put some plates into it, so you have some hidden armor that's still going to give you visually the right look. And here's some helmet shapes and some shield shapes that might play nice for that time period. Or if you want to be this guy. Again, here's a breakdown of what some of the different layers would look like that get you there. So how to add coats of plates, padded leg armor. I'm just going to go through this quick, but I've put it up in the chat so people can all download themselves a copy. But it's really a neat way of taking a look at what some of those medieval silhouettes look like, and then tearing them down. And this one even gives you an idea of how to build a shield press if you really want that curved shield.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Your Grace. I would like to, you're giving us these great period examples, and I'm gonna take a hard right turn here, and I'm gonna keep you on the spot,
Absolutely.
because I know you'll have some thoughts on this, because I copied you when I went to sport armor, and when I realized how well that lacrosse rib set that you ran so many years, how well that works. I flagrantly copied you, and when I did that. So I'd like to know your thoughts on sport gear. Do you see it as a potential permanent solution, or as a stepping stone from the newbie bin to your own personal set?
You've got the picture of me in front of you now, right?
Yep.
Okay, so this was my first armor that didn't look like it was out of a newbie bin. This is a fabric top over mostly sports gear. And I've managed to hide most of the sins of what I was doing. And I have continued playing that game. I've got lots of different varieties of gear that I wear. But I'm able to get a medieval silhouette and keep a variety of different armor going underneath. And I have more period armor now than I did when I started. But you wouldn't necessarily have to know that. And so I don't know, I think there's a lot of opinions on whether you want to take the sport route because it's more competitive, or it's lighter and easier on your body. But I'd go back to that Night of the Month thing I was talking about and say, if you pick a silhouette, if you pick an external look that you're going for, and you can get there with plastic and titanium, go for it. But that's if you have that silhouette, you also know what's not working. When you wear the giant parachute pants and then try to represent a 14th century persona, it'll never work. They've totally hidden your plastic armor, but you're never going to get to the look you want with that solution. If you decide to be Norse, wear those giant parachute pants and put leg wraps from your ankles to your knees, all of a sudden your silhouette's not bad. and nobody can see that you have giant plastic legs under there. But because the billowy pants look right for the persona you're trying to portray, you've kind of got this Viking roost thing going on. You can start to hide. You can start to hide plastic armor and modern sports equipment because the outline looks right. So that's my long-winded answer.
I think you've highlighted a key point, and it's about that profile. It's about the outline, and it's about the ability to cover up the mundane sports armor and still preserve that medieval look that we're striving for and that we're hoping for. And I think that is one of the pitfalls with sports armor, is that it's pretty difficult to find an illumination or a period source that looks like football shoulder pads. It's one thing to hide lacrosse ribs under an excellent jupon, but those football shoulder pads, and you'll remember, brother, we had a lot of those in the newbie bin because
they work.
They work. And
they work.
Football shoulder pads and then one tombstone in the front, and you're done. You're cut. Well, a tombstone in the back too. So it's. I think that's one of the biggest pitfalls with sport gear, is how easy it can be, and the fact that, I'm not going to name any names, Abe still has his football shoulders, if I recall correctly.
Well, we touched on this earlier when we talked about when is the right time to start moving out of your newbie gear, and I think if you've picked a persona and you've picked a kind of a destination, that helps get you on the road and wanting to make that change.
Yeah.
Because a hockey set of shoulders, you have good movement, you have good protection. It's really easy to get comfortable in gear that's working and not pull yourself out of it and say, I don't look right. This was good for the first year or two, but I can do better.
Yeah, exactly. So, Brother Olen, what are your thoughts? Oh, you muted yourself. You were off and now you're on.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Yep.
Technology. I was just thinking of, this is getting newbies in armor. Yeah. One of our newer university students, he went to great lengths to start building a coat of plates. And he's like, boy, these copper rivets are really expensive. So I said, well, hey, use nails instead, and this is how you do it. But there's an even cheaper way that I've started to use, is in my gambesons themselves, you can sew a whole bunch of pockets in and put the plates in.
Yeah.
And then you're not spending money on nails or anything. It's as cheap as you can get. It is, though, time consuming if you're not good at sewing or using a sewing machine. So that's where what's worth more, the getting the copper rivets, for example, or spending the time sewing something. How much is your time worth?
Yep.
And what do you take pride in doing? Some people really like working with the metal, and other people are like, oh, I really like sewing. So there's a whole bunch of different ways to play that off.
Awesome.
And if you're well informed, there's also nothing wrong with buying it.
Yeah.
With the caveat of if you're well informed, because there are people that join this game and they have their career set and they have some money in the bank and they would like to go and spend money and just start playing. And like I said, my only caveat to that is check with some of the veterans who've been around for a bit, whether it's online and in SCA groups or locally, and just buy the right stuff.
Yep. Girl Squad, I'd like to hear your thoughts on sport armor. Katie, I know you run the lacrosse gear. How has that worked for you? We have a message in the post there. Tanik indicating that she got rid of her lacrosse pads. They were hidden and worked. Had some plans to replace them someday, but never did. How's the lacrosse worked out for you?
So I wear the lacrosse, I guess, belt. I don't wear it all the time. It depends on like what I'm doing. At practice, I normally actually don't wear it. And then if I go to any kind of tournament, I wear it because I get hit very hard. So I need more protection. I guess I actually have a question.
Yes.
because I thought I understood what you meant by sport gear, but I'm actually not sure now. Can you define what sport gear is?
Awesome. Yeah. And I should have done that from the beginning. So when I'm saying sport gear, I'm referring to anything you can go to a sporting goods store and purchase off the shelf.
Okay.
So everything from hockey gloves, football shoulder pads, lacrosse kidney protection, hockey shin and knee integrated pads. That's what I'm referring to as sport armor for the purposes of this.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is just a new perspective. And also I will acknowledge my privilege again in the way that I have some money to be able to afford to buy some of this stuff. I love sport gear. Wish I could buy everything as sport gear. I have just played a lot of sports before, and just love being able to just like go out and get what I need. I have struggled so much with my leg armor. I'm finding it very heavy. I've made 6 sets of legs, bought or made 6 sets of legs, and they all pull on my waist because my waist is up here, and I don't know, maybe smaller. It needs to be very tight, the belt, and the legs like pull on the belt. So I've been looking at, I guess, sport options for legs that I could wear that wouldn't be so cumbersome and painful. So yeah, I like sport gear. I think it's sort of like some sport gear is better than others. Obviously, like the lacrosse thing, a couple of people have mentioned. So I find that's very good. I've been looking into some leg options, but I haven't tried anything before, so can't really speak to like the effectiveness of that. But I do think like we're playing this game that is also, it's 2021, we don't need to necessarily make everything out of period materials if we don't want to. The important thing is like preserving that silhouette, I guess, as you mentioned. Is like the important thing is that we're trying to emulate that, at least on the outside. But I think if that's something that you want to do, I think there's definitely pros to it.
Astrid, before we hear from you, I just want to take a second to apologize because I have allowed myself to slip into the comfort zone of sharing this panel with people that I practice with regularly and people that I go to events with regularly, part of my principality, part of my fealty lineage and whatnot. And yeah, so I have addressed Katie and Astrid as Girl Squad. That is, again, because of the familiarity here, knowing that is the term that we use for the group. And I do acknowledge, though, that was not known or addressed at the beginning, and so it could come across. I didn't. It's not coming off condescending or anything like that. This is they're wearing the shirts, and yeah, I apologize for that. Yeah, and I can totally understand how it's a privilege for us to be able to use that term in a fun and friendly fashion, whereas undoubtedly, and this is probably a whole nother panel topic, how that could actually be a less pleasing experience for other communities that don't have that same level of female involvement in fighting and building that. So thank you very much for bringing that point up. And yeah, that's where that's coming from. So I will endeavor to refrain from that for the rest of this. Astrid, so your thoughts on sport gear? I don't really know that we had sport gear options for you to capitalize on when you started.
No, so no, I ended up using one of there's like this metal fencing that it's like, I don't know, breast protection that you can wear. When I start first fighting, I padded up a lot. I want to make sure that I didn't feel anything because I was scared of like how I'm gonna be feeling with my body. And I know as a new fighter, you usually ended up putting more than you probably need. and it might be a safer bet. I don't know if like other fighters here in chat like feel that way, that you have to like over pat everywhere just to make sure that you cover all the areas. But as you start getting more comfortable with your body and how it moves and everything, you start finding out that sometimes that over part restricts your movement and your body type. It just designed that different way. So I always like to refer, for example, for female fighters in this case, I go to the SCA woman and minority groups to ask for a reference. So why are they using Kira here? I normally just I like, hey, I need to know what you're using right now, because you never know what actually other players at your height could work for you too, right? Like I normally use like I was using a different set of legs that wasn't letting me bend my knees. So I ended up buying more, and you ended up spending more money. So if you take a little bit of that time to, if you can take the time and ask around first, before you start buying any, even sportwear, you have the hockey, what is it, gill? Is like what I call it? So we were using, yeah, we were using like the all sports bulky one. As a female, you're like, you don't need that. There is a hockey one, there is a baseball, I think, that they have like more suited to your body. So I think that will be my only 5 points here. Ask those groups if you have those questions, because they will already have some sort of experience with what could work for you. And not all, especially for short people, female, like myself, it tends to be like quite a struggle. But yeah.
Awesome, thanks. So I'm just noticing here that we've been flying through our time, and that's awesome. So I do want to hit up our last topic. I don't think we had too many unanswered questions on sport armor. So the next thing I want to talk about here, and this will, I'll aim this squarely at Brother Olen and Brother Ieuan here. Armor parties, one set at a time or an assembly line of mass production. I'd like to know your thoughts on what kind of an armor party you prefer to run, what kind of an armor party you think has the greatest value for new fighters. And then we'll see what Katie and Astrid have to say on that. Sir Olen, why don't you fire off on this? Tell us how your armor parties have looked in the Okanagan there.
So I'm on right now?
You are.
Okay. My personal favorite is around 3 or 4 people. But it depends upon what the project is. So for example, if you're doing demis, you get the leather, you trace the pattern, you cut the pattern out. This is all stuff you can do as a group. And then I got a big jug or a big cauldron of wax, and then we can hook them in and do like a whole bunch at one time. And then once they cool off, then we can do assembly. So there are times where we'd have 7 or 8 people, and by the time you herd all the kittens and you get all the stuff in place, you might be able to dip everything, but then you don't have time to assemble just because everybody has questions. So that's just one example. But another thing is that I really like to encourage people taking pride in making their own armor. I don't want to make armor for people. I will show you how to make armor. I can remember Richard of Broadmeadows, making those legs that I showed earlier over his gas stove, or heating them up and curving them and dipping them in water. That's one of my earliest SCA memories, making those damn things. Or him, the guy's an artist, so he's showing me how to make copper rivets that are gorgeous. So I will spend the time and show the students copper rivets, for example, of how I was taught how to do them and why. And I'll do, okay, this is how you do it. Your turn. Oh, you really messed it up, eh? Yeah, you did. Guess what? Make 10,000 more of those and it's going to look pretty eventually, but you got to put the time in and take the pride in what you're doing. And some of our university students, they're almost more interested in making the armor than they are in fighting in it. Sometimes it feels like. So group size, sorry to go back to group size, would be project dependent. A start to finish is one person, but it could be a small group if it's a small project in the first place. But you can also do projects in stages. I don't know, that completely blather appropriately.
That's good. The key point there, acknowledging project size. It's a project management thing, right? Understand your scope and then get started appropriately. Sir Ieuan, your thoughts?
For the most part, I agree. I think if you're going to get bigger groups than kind of 3 or 4 people, you really need to have more veterans in the mix. For me, a big part of that mentorship piece is building those relationships and having time to have those conversations and tell the stories and laugh at the jokes and laugh at the horrible fails and be like, yeah, that's one of the ways you can screw it up. Want me to show you 3 more? Because we've all done it. And I think in the smaller groups, it is a bit more intimate. You have more time to kind of personalize things and talk through it. And if you're going to do a bigger project, I think you need more veterans running it and probably more pre-planning. I would be pretty comfortable with 1 or 2 guys in my shop to just see what we end up with. But if I'm going to invite a bunch more, I have to have the patterns pulled out and the materials ready, and we're here to make this thing. Or like Olen said, we just won't get anywhere. We'll spend the afternoon talking. We won't leave with anything done.
Yeah. Katie and Astrid, your thoughts on armor parties that you felt were successful and armor parties that you walked away from thinking you should have done something else with that 3 hours?
I'm not sure, to be honest, when we have hosted armor parties in the past, the lamellar armor took me so long to make. I think every armor party I was making that lamellar, so many of those plates, cutting them out, and I think I punched 400 holes in that thing. So yeah, I think that depending on the space that you have as well makes a difference. Our space, I would say 4, maybe 5 people. Anything more than that, it needs to be a pretty nice day so that we can open the garage. I think it gets pretty crowded. Yeah, I don't know. Astrid, what are your thoughts?
First, make sure that you're wearing steel-toed boots, because I got an emboll to my toe. I think that I like the idea that as a community we can achieve a better way to get more supplies into each shire. I really hope that we can take on the legacy to bring in more fighters into our community by getting those. If you already know you have old gear, maybe restore it. Try to make sure that you have more equipment that you need. And for the armor parties, I think it was great to have, because then that way you build a connection with somebody in the community. I didn't know a lot of the fighters, and it was going to those parties, going to the fight practice, and asking those questions that build the trust and build a connection. Coming to Canada and not having all the tools up hand, and make sure that you have a friend that has all those tools. It's priceless because you don't have to pay for them. But it's just accessible, right? Make it accessible. And I think that that's something that we should aim for. Make it accessible for everybody. And actually get your idea out of the perfection, because nothing's going to be perfect the first time, right? That struggle. I struggle that because I'm a cosplayer and I want to make sure that I do it on the everything perfect, that looks great, that gets everybody excited about it. But that is not the case when you're starting. And I think that was my learning lesson is I do not need to make sure that it looks great. I need to make sure that it's safe for me to play and that I can get out there and fight. So
awesome. Thanks. Just being mindful of our timeline here. Moderators, are we able to go into overtime? I do have one last question, and I would like to go with questions. I see a yes. Perfect.
Yeah, as long as you need, go for it. We've had talkers go to 11 o'clock.
Okay. Well, we're not doing that. Cool. So just a reminder to anyone out there, and especially to the new fighters that have joined us, please, please, please throw your questions in the chat. Press the hands up button. Let's get your questions answered before we conclude today. The last topic I had, given that we have discussed helmets already, this will be a quick and easy one, and that is the last suit. Is there such a thing? Is that even possible? Your Grace, we saw, I think, about 5, maybe 6 different images there. I'm going to assume that you don't believe in a last suit. What are your thoughts there?
No, I mean, I've got, probably 6 or 7 versions of what I currently have, depending on which pieces I put together, and probably as many ideas in my head of things I'd like time to build. So yeah,
it's part of the fun. Brother Olen, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm a armor hoarder, and I like to sometimes choose different armor depending on, say, the weather. So if I know it's going to be a super hot event, I'm going to lighten right down to sports armor type stuff. That being said, if it's war and you're getting shots from really weird, bizarre angles, I will armor up a little heavier. Yeah. So, and it's always evolving. It's like, oh, this is, not quite what I want, or quite the look I want, or hey, there's something cool and neat, let's try that out. So it's always evolving.
Yeah. Katie, Astrid, you have nothing but suits of armor in your future, so I think we can understand where you'd be coming from. I would like to throw out there, maybe this would be a good way to close things. So I'm going to ask everyone for a piece of advice specifically aimed towards the new fighters watching this now and in the future. So I'll lead on. My piece of advice to new fighters in terms of getting kitted up is to get a container, a pickle jar, an old Glenfiddich tin, something. Duct tape that thing shut. Use glue. Make it so you cannot get into that container with the exception of a little slot on top, and start squirreling your money away, because there will come a time where you will want to spoil yourself as a fighter. And I'm putting them on right now. My brothers know what these are, and they know who made them, and they know how much they cost. These are the best gauntlets I have ever had the pleasure of wearing, and it took me 20 years to get here and to be able to have the funds to be able to justify the expense and that sort of thing. I wish I had these 15 years ago, but it wasn't a reality for me then. If you can be disciplined with saving some money, then you'll be able to spoil yourself a lot sooner. And I'd say for 2 things in particular, gauntlets and your helmet, every dollar you spend, it's an incremental increase in your quality, the better protection you're going to get, and it's absolutely worth it. So my advice to new fighters, save some money in a way that you can't cheat and take that money away, and spoil yourself when you can. Your Grace, your piece of advice.
I'm going to go with the one I started off talking about in the chat. Is like, don't neglect your soft kit. We spent a lot of time talking about all the hard armor, starting from the ground up, whether it's Zoom Bang or Under Armour shirts, or a jock that actually fits you properly. When your knee pads are worn out, you should change them because they're not doing their job anymore. We spent a lot of time thinking about the stuff on the outside and how it looks. But yeah, paying attention to those underlayers. They help you with armor bites. They help you with heat management. They help make all the layers that go on top of them actually fit properly. So yeah, spending a little bit of time once you're getting out of your first kit, thinking about all those kind of foundation layers. We wouldn't play other sports without considering them. So don't forget them here.
Awesome. Excellent advice. Your Excellency, Brother Olen, your gem for the crowd. Are you still muted, brother?
Damn technology. Use your resources. Reach out, both through your circle of friends and through your SCA groups, and everybody will have a little trick to show you of some sort or another that will make your armoring experience more enjoyable in some way, shape, or form. So yeah, I would say my advice is use your resources, and don't be afraid to reach out even beyond your circles. If nobody locally is doing stuff, go to the next closest group and start asking them.
Excellent advice. Astrid, a piece of advice as a new fighter.
As a new fighter, I will say ask the right questions. No, I think like always check that you're doing it safe. That's my only advice, because it's not, there is no price for that, right? Like no price for your head, your hands, your legs. But make sure that you're like reaching out to people that actually know, and always change your foam on your helmet. Make sure that you're like always with your marshals before you even start fighting.
Excellent advice.
Astrid kind of took my piece of advice, which is going to be protect your head, foam your helmet properly. I think that's so important. It's something that, like we want to get new people in armor, and it's like, this helmet doesn't totally fit. Here you go. And yeah, it's just not worth it. It's not worth it at all. So just make sure the helmet that you get doesn't need to fit you exactly right, but you should have enough padding in there to make sure that you can safely take a hit from somebody who's going to hit you pretty hard.
Yeah.
And doesn't care that your helmet doesn't fit you properly. So if you're wearing a helmet that doesn't fit properly, then just don't fight. It's like, don't say, oh, just don't hit me in the head because my helmet doesn't really fit me properly. Just don't do it, because those are experiences that Astrid and I have had, and it's just not necessary at all. So it's nothing worth. It's not worth it. So just make sure that you're wearing, especially on your head, you're wearing the right armor. The rest of it is just get out there, have fun.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So we're going to bring in a guest appearance here. She's been lurking in the background. We heard her earlier. Your Excellency, thank you for allowing me to put you on the spot. I would really appreciate, Sir Ieuan, a piece of advice as a veteran female fighter. I would love to have what you could share with us.
All right. God, I could pontificate on this. If anything, get out of your head about being a woman in armor. A fighter is a fighter to a fighter. The only thing that I would like you to focus on if you're out there is look at your body type. Your body type is what's really going to define your fighting abilities, not what's between your legs and holding up your bra. So if that's the biggest thing that I can get out there, but to that extent, then when you're dealing with advice, sometimes you end up with overpraise, and that's fair. And this is sort of advice out to the men out there. Don't overpraise women more than you would the other fighter out there, because I've run into the situation where I would go out, I had amazing praise in practice, and then I got my ass handed to me in a tournament and didn't understand why there was a level difference. So that's something for everybody else out there. But for women, understand that sometimes things that might be shown to you might feel a little bit different. Trust in yourself to play with your body. That sounded terrible. What I meant is that trust that you can feel free to modify, ask questions, right? If it doesn't quite work the way it's being shown to you, play with it a little bit within reason so that you're not going to hurt yourself, but you might find you might throw things a little bit differently. You might move a little bit differently. That's okay. So.
Awesome.
And I'm going to keep it at that nugget for now. If you want more, oh my God. So there you go.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you allowing me to put you on the spot like that. That concludes the topics that we had set up in advance of this. So I would like to, again, new fighters, now's your chance. If you got some questions, please ask them in the chat, put up your hand, whatever. If there are no further questions, we can look to wrap this up. Kiva, I see you had your hand up there. It looked like you have something to say.
Just quickly, I noticed that you guys used a lot of different terms for armor bits without sometimes saying what they were. Do you mind going through what are some of the like top 10 pieces of armor, what they're called, where they go, what they do? Do we have time for that?
Yeah, absolutely. Quick and easy. Let's start with the top. Obviously, we've got helmets. Ian was showing us one earlier.
Yeah.
I would argue one of the key first armor bits to customize to get away from the newbie loner gear is your gorget. That is your neck protection. That is something that you want to individualize for yourself immediately. We talked about tombstones and clamshells, torso armor, shoulder armor we talked about. Vambraces. Olen, you got a vambrace back there? There's a demi, so that is a wrist protection and a bit of hand protection. Vambraces include your elbow, your forearm, and usually a cop. There we go. Gauntlets, worth every penny. Save your money, especially if you want to get into two-handed battle or fighting in wars, that sort of thing. Gauntlets are what you're going to want. We didn't talk about a sea belt. Oh yes, there we go. There's the sword with a basket hilt. That's again more of that protection for your hand. And there's a lot of different designs. That's a molded plastic one. There's a set of legs, that we got holding up there. Pickle barrel plastic. You know, the vast majority of new fighters, that's what you start with. It's cheap, it's affordable, it protects. You know, you combine that with a pair of knee pads underneath, you're looking good. There's another sword with a cross guard. Love it. There's another different kind of basket hilt style. Yeah, there we go. There's another one. The cups, you know, you're going to want a cup. You're going to want a Jill, whatever suits you best.
Got all the swords.
Yeah. Your Grace, thank you for putting those up there. You know, more of the parts showing up in the chat. And then one thing Astrid talked about, and that could have been a totally another conversation point, is footwear. You know, when do you want to transition from the steel-toed boots to more period footwear and that sort of thing? And I would argue that comes with time. Time and conditions are the two things.
I'm gonna jump in here. I'm a hater on the steel toes.
I knew it.
Steel toes are so hard on your feet for footwork. If you're really worried about getting your toes crushed, I'm not gonna say no to anybody. But man, like even a pair of sturdy hiking boots is better than steel toes. They slow you down. They're hard on your feet. They don't let your feet move properly. I think I fight often in turn shoes, so I have no tread, no support, and my feet are still attached to my ankles.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think sometimes that becomes part of that kind of newbie provenance of I will put all the armor on all of the places. But yeah, I've never been a fan of the steel toes.
I'd like to see more Sabatons out there, you know? Let's
Absolutely. Add that to the list.
Yeah.
I think that was one of the first advice that I got was like, we are going to war, make sure that you wear steel toes boots, just because people are going to step on you and you might not like it.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, so there's a quick and easy list of different bits of equipment. But again, for new fighters, seek out your community. Seek out the veteran fighters in your community. And if you're remote and isolated, you know, yes, I acknowledge that's going to be a little bit tougher, but look at us now. You know, we've got people from across the continent joining us here. The technology exists. You know, I have been musing for weeks about doing a Twitch stream about armoring. So there, I can't be the only one. So there are opportunities out there, and eventually we will get back together again. So armor parties can happen again, and just utilize those veteran voices and skill and knowledge, and absorb as much of it as you can, and get out on the field. Let's do a round table here. Closing thoughts, anyone? I'll finish this off with a dedication at the end here, but if anyone would like to close out, now's a chance. Olen, you're beside my image on the left, so we're going with you.
Mute. There we go. I think I got this time. Well, we're about newbie armor, so we want to make things accessible and help people out because we've all been there. And you know, after this is all done, if anybody wants to reach out, Facebook's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. If I can help people, give me a shout.
Awesome, thank you. Astrid.
I was gonna jump right into it. I was gonna say, if you are worried about how much money you're gonna spend, better to spend time than to spend money. Take your time, get out the pressure of like, well, I really want to start hitting people. Take your time to build your armor, and instead of like going expending that big bucks.
Awesome. Thank
Cheaper time.
Your Grace.
I'm gonna go back to what Olen was saying. We have a huge online community in the SCA that none of us had when we started. There are so many places now to reach out. SCA buy and sells, armoring forums, like local branches. You can't find somebody near you. You can find somebody on your keyboard, and there's lots of us who like to talk, and listen to a variety of opinions. Get a couple of different perspectives, and you'll start to see the crossover pretty quickly. There'll be some common themes of good advice that makes sense. Like Astrid said, take your time to figure it out and find a group of people you enjoy spending that time with. So
awesome.
Oh, I'm just going to echo what everybody else said. Yeah, I think, yeah, just ask, like, if you don't know anybody. There's a lot of SCA groups, like Facebook groups. So you don't even need to ask a specific person. You know, I found them to be very helpful. I asked recently there's like a gender minority fighting group about legs, because I said I've struggled with them before. And I, within the space of one day, had like 50 different suggestions for legs. I mean, it can be a little overwhelming, but it also speaks to like that one thing doesn't work for everybody. So yeah, just find what works for you, and yeah, just reach out.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
So we did have one last question in the chat there from Astrid, asking if we have a secondhand seller in Antir. I would say that we do not have a dedicated person that is doing that. But as like His Grace has mentioned there, there is a lot of gear hiding in garages. There are individuals that acquire stuff and have it for sale. So it really is, it does take a little bit of sleuthing. Easiest thing to do is to post at your local level and expand out from there. You know, go local, go with your master stables, put a post on your local Facebook page or whatever. Hey, I'm looking for a helmet. If you can't find one local, then it will expand out sometimes on your behalf, you know.
And go to those armor parties and those newbie nights and newcomer meetings. If I find somebody who's interested in fighting and they're trying the stuff and talking to people and they just can't find a pair of elbow cups, they magically turn up.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times like one of us has just walked into our garage and been like, I know who can use those.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, like join the community, and like there's lots of us who want to help.
And I think there's another really good thing too is to communicate. You know, maybe you're not looking for a helmet, but if you know that there's one individual in your shire that happens to have a shelf of helmets in his garage because he will buy them knowing that newbies will need them, let them know, share that information when you see it. And that, because that helps, right? As long as you're helping the community, it's good. And even though some people might think that the garage is too full of helmets, they're wrong, because that's impossible.
So there's a question about rattan.
Oh, yeah.
We ordered a bunch of rattan in Lower Mainland. It's kind of stuck in the States right now.
Yeah.
I expect as soon as the border opens up, we'll end up with a lot more rattan turning up. It was really cheap to ship to Seattle back when the border was easy to get across. But I don't know of anyone in the Lower Mainland right now who has any more rattan than the odd stick.
Yeah, the flow of rattan in current times, excluding the COVID restrictions, is so much more reliable than it was 20 years ago. Back then the rule was see rattan, buy rattan. You didn't ask questions. If you saw rattan for sale, you bought as much as you could afford, and you brought that home and shared that with everyone else.
Yeah.
It's a little bit easier now. And again, like you said, once that border opens up, the rattan will be available. A good comment there from Yurgi. Excellent. Yes, there are local helmet makers. That's all part of the discussion you have to have. Ask around, make it known that you're in the market, and things will start to appear. So it's just part of that communications process. And I understand that for a new individual, that can be daunting. I'm flippantly saying ask around, but that can be harder than it sounds. So if you have to, find someone that you have comfort with, you have that confidence with, and you can say, hey, I'm super nervous about going and asking Sir Older than Adams here about buying an old helmet. What do you think? Do what's comfortable for you, and communicate to a level that's comfortable for you, and people will help. We're all in this together, and the only thing that's better than people is more people, and we want to get more people on the field, and that means helmets, that means gear. And so as soon as we know that someone needs help and is vested in the interest of it, we're there to help. So I think that rounds everything out, unless there's any. This is the last chance. I'm throwing it out there. Last chance for questions. Hit that hands up button if you want to chat. Put it in the chat right now. Type it in there if you want to do that. Thank you, Miles. Yeah, thanks everyone for attending. I hope that you were able to come away with this with some knowledge, some perspectives, that sort of thing, and really hope that this helps new fighters get out on the field. Looking forward to seeing you out there. It just gets stronger if the gears do it. Question: is there an online database with armor patterns? Armor Archive is still a thing, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, armorarchive.org. That is great. Another question there after we stop recording. Yeah, I think now is a good time to officially draw this to a close. I would like to take a second to dedicate this session to a man that helped me equip a number of new fighters, Ole Einarsson. He was a great comrade and a good friend, and our society shines less brightly for his passing. And so I want to dedicate this session in Ole's memory, and he'd get a chuckle knowing that new fighters out there in the future will watch this and hopefully have learned a thing or two. So thank you all very much for your time, and good luck.